I'm Steve Gilman, and this is Brand Story, where we help you build stronger, more sustainable brands by sharing insightful conversations with brand leaders, marketers, and professional storytellers. And my guest today is Baeshean.
The reality is, when you're creative, we are passionate individuals, right? We get excited, we get angry, we get sad, we go through all the emotions. That's okay. You're not creating this for yourself. You're going to put the best work out there based on the finding and the insights. But then also being able to mentor a team to understand that when you present it, you ultimately need to remember you are also, doing this for someone, and whatever comes your way in terms of feedback, you'll take it. And as long as it makes sense, you'll apply it and you'll deliver that.
My guest today is Baeshean, partner, VP, and global head of design at Known, one of the top independent agencies in the country and really in the world. And she has worked for clients like BMW, Nike, Chanel, McDonald's, Netflix, and so many more. Hi, Aya. Welcome to Brand Story.
Hi, Steve. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's so much fun to have you on after having Ross Martin on the show. He's one of the founders of Known, and you've been there for multiple years now. Like how many years?
It's going to be 3.5 years, I think, reaching 4 soon.
Yeah, and you've worked for so many of the best agencies in the world, and a lot of the big, holding company corporate agencies, and now you're in an independent agency. How's the view from the independent world?
Yeah, I started very, I would say, like, I was very much into a very traditional advertising, space. And then I don't know, there's just time for a change. And Known was an opportunity that excited me because they were doing things differently. And I think once you're doing something for many years in a very traditional way, you kind of want to like break the walls and try something different.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Known. You can tell because you're my second person from your agency to have on my podcast. I just love your all's work. I love the way you work. I think it's really fascinating. So you have a very unique perspective that I wanted to jump off just talking about a little bit. You have a very global perspective. You're very well traveled. You have a really interesting background. How do you think that informs your design?
Oh, it informs it completely. I mean, my background, I'm half Swiss, half Saudi, so I've already grown up in two very contrasting cultures.
Very contrasting.
Very contrasting. So between languages, religion, traditions, way of lives, even the evolution of life, put it this way, was women rights, right? Versus, like how the Western side is operating. And I would say like from a very young age, I've always had to balance that duality and finding that harmony between both. And that has definitely shaped the way I am as a person today. And in some way, that's also why everybody knows I'm a little bit, like I'm always looking to ruffle feathers or like to like really create some tension in safe spaces to like see what's that middle looks like, right? When you've got these contrasting opinions. And I think that's because of my background.
Yeah, and you do something that I think is also really fascinating that has to inform your work in design. You're huge on volunteering, and a lot of people say they like to go volunteer, but you're highly committed to volunteering. I know you've volunteered for extensive periods in like Costa Rica, all sorts of different places in the world. And you have another trip coming up, don't you?
I do. I've got Zambia around the corner.
Wow. So you're just volunteering on the African continent right now.
It's no, so I'm still in New York. I'm leaving in a few weeks. And I know a lot of people always ask me, like, how do you even find time? And the truth is, you make time for what you want to do. Like, the truth is, if you really want to do something, you will carve time. And that means, we all have some downtime, and I choose to spend a lot of my downtime traveling. I find that it really enriches me, it recharges me. And if I can implement volunteering at the same time, and I know it sounds a bit cliche saying this out loud, but when I'm able to travel and see these other cultures and really immerse myself in different cultures and then see how I can help or give a hand, or, it's the small things that make the big impacts. And I think that a lot of people want to volunteer, but they often feel overwhelmed on where do I start? Do I have time? Can I really add this commitment to my life? And the truth is, you don't need to do much, you know?
And I'm sure your view of culture and experiencing all these different cultures is, much, much different. The difference between volunteering and a vacation is night and day. going and staying at a resort, you don't really get a view on the culture.
You don't.
Yeah, so you're really in it, and do you think so? You've done so many of these,
Yeah, the truth is again, because of my background and having had the quite frankly, the luxury of having lived in 2 different continent as a child and these 2 different very rich cultures, I've always been drawn to immerse myself in things that are different, only because that felt more like home. And I would say that comes from a place where, being half and half. So when I would be in Switzerland, I wouldn't feel 100% Swiss. So a bit of an imposter, right? And when I would be in the Middle East, I don't speak Arabic. So I don't really belong, right? So there's this thing of like, where do I belong? And the truth is, we belong everywhere. And I know this again sounds very cliche, but we belong everywhere. And when I discover these new places, I feel more at home because you're welcome. People are happy to have you. There's a sense, not everywhere, obviously, but there's a sense of people love showing their culture and sharing their traditions. And when you're an outsider coming in and you've got this like warmth coming at you, you just feel like, okay, I belong here. This feels right. And so I've always been an avid, chaser of immersive experiences and immersive, you know, travel experiences so I can really enrich myself further. So I think that fuels it. And then, like I said, when you have tools or skill set that others don't and that you can help, and it can be an hour of your time, it can be a week, why not?
right? Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful way to feel like you belong, and also that exploration. I feel like you can see it in your work. Like I looked at so much of your design work, and it feels like belonging. It feels like you're exploring the gap between spaces and peoples and how people perceive things. So you get these very inviting, really cool. Just I don't have a better word than really cool design. Your
Thank you.
design is great. So you were an artist before a designer.
Yes, it's also true. That is also a tricky one. I would say yes and no. I definitely would say that um, I always found myself drawn to the creative space, and that was in the form of painting in my teenage years. I remember it was like I took an art class, and then I had really amazing teachers that insisted I pursue that, and I realized I was always drawn to the abstraction because abstraction meant that it can be interpreted by anyone, that I am not forcing a point of view. I'm just welcoming you to have your point of view based on what I'm creating. Um, and again, like allowing an area that could like spark a visceral reaction inside that you didn't think you might have. And that's how I've learned how to communicate. As I mentioned, I didn't speak Arabic when I lived in Saudi Arabia, so I struggled with the language. When my brother and my mother and I moved to Switzerland, I didn't speak very proper French. My English was broken. So I always felt language was a barrier. And I know folks might think like, "Really? You speak a lot, you speak fast." But the truth is, yes, now I'm able to express myself through languages, but for a long time I felt more comfortable to do it through the abstraction.
That is so interesting. I mean, your work has such bold shapes. I mean, the way you work with shape and contrast and the way that your work flows. So we'll put a link on your episode page to your personal website where a lot of your work is. And I think that's so interesting because a lot of great designers or creatives always have that little bit of observer outsider feeling. So the fact that you were so much more comfortable communicating visually, it's almost a gift for moving between those two cultures.
It is. It is, and it's also, I would say, ultimately at the end, like designing or branding, or painting, it's all still there's a narrative, right? You're creating a narrative. With painting, you're doing it through a brush stroke. What I loved, evolving myself into the creative space is that now there's another level of dimension because now it's not just about my self-expression, it's about integrating strategy, it's integrating goals. What are we designing for? What are we creating the story about? And I think that's what excited me even more. I love both, but design and creativity allows for the implementation of that brand foundation, and it allows for implementing data now into the work you do to really like hone into what you're crafting.
That's so interesting because, you know, it's so strange to tell someone what their work feels like, but your work feels like connection. And you know, when you think about how what we just talked about your how you grew up and how you were attracted to shapes and, you know, communicating visually, of course you love the strategy because you're trying to communicate and connect with others and use these very visual tools to do it. So that's just such a unique, cool perspective on design. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about Known because the combination that you all have, and I know you just became partners, so congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's definitely very exciting. Very honored by that promotion, and it was very rewarding because it made me realize that the work I've done since I arrived really meant something. As I mentioned, I the culture and blending, blending differences and opinions is really important to me, and I do promote a lot of diversity because I do come from a diversity background, and so the promotion definitely meant a lot to me because it felt that what I believe in and what I feel is important is being acknowledged and rewarded. And I would say I've always been a big champion, like I said, to create a big diverse pool of talent around me because as I said, like I can't travel all the time. So having that diversity around me constantly is fulfilling as well for me, but also for others. And I feel like with the partnership, now I'm able to even deepen that mission and also deepen the way I work, which is very, I would say, spontaneous, yes, and I do lead with feelings. But at the same time, it's also creating a safe space for people to really flourish in their ability to create amazing work.
That's great. And I think, you know, Known has some capabilities that are really unique and in combination. Like you're the way I talked to Ross about this in his episode, so we won't go too far into the data side, but you all really, you know, use data in some fascinating ways with, you know, you have a whole, you know, bunch of data scientists and all the strategy and great strategists, and then you really bring art together with that. Is that ever a struggle? Is it there a lot of tension there, or how does that all work for you?
No, so I would say we all have different work styles, right? And that's the beauty of it. That was one of the main reasons why I was so eager to come to Known. I was working in traditional, I'm not gonna say where, but I was working somewhere where I was happy, but there was, I felt a bit of a scratch of, I wanna do something different. I wanna be able to work with teams in a different way. I get bored very quickly, and if things don't move fast enough or don't evolve with the times, I tend to wonder. And what I loved with Known is I was really intrigued by this whole package of we do all of it. We're art, science, and strategy all in one. And everybody says this. Let's be very honest. We all say it. But I was like, okay. And then their approach on things were different. And I thought, okay, and there are new companies. So that means that they have the ability to do things differently, right?
And they're independent, which matters.
They're independent, and obviously, I met Ross through an interview, and I was like, "Wow, like, okay."
He's a really he's a really fascinating dude.
Fascinating, and I thought, "Okay, this is now okay," and I'm able to express myself the way I do, which I've always been able to, but there was something about, I come in, I speak fast, I've got lots of energy, I try to wrap up calls in 5 minutes, and they were like, "Yeah, you gotta come here." I'm like, "Done." Uh, yeah, and when I joined, I saw it right away. What I love is that, yes, we're based here in New York. We've got all our teams in the office, so we're not really siloed. And then it's really like I said, if you are willing to break the traditional way of working and everybody has this headspace, which is here, you can just create so much synergy in the work and it just amplifies the results. It helps work more efficiently. I'm a big collaborator. I am not meant to know everything on every subject. I do not want to know everything on every subject. And I love being able to, when let's say I design a new look and feel for a brand or a refresh, that I'm able to sit like next to a strategist who's working with me on the same project and we can go back and forth with our audit, with our thinking, and their work will inform a lot how I'm thinking of developing the look and feel with my team. And then we just go back and forth, and it's less of a here's the brand strategy work. Good luck. No, there's that back and forth, and it becomes a conversation. And when you can then add to that data and the findings that we're collecting constantly, you're prone to create great work and to create impactful work.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And a lot of agencies do say, and one of the things I learned about Known doing research and then talking with Ross and not getting to talk to you is that you all really are on the edge of some of this stuff. The way you're using data, how fast you're working together, and how you're truly actually working together. So I'm sure that collaboration, that speed of collaboration, really appeals to your sort of sense of community. So how do you impart that? So now that you're a partner, and I know you've been supervising other designers, what's your philosophy on like trying to get young designers to get on board with this kind of process instead of like if they're used to the sort of siloed, you guys are the designers, you design over there.
I will say so I also have a very, I wouldn't say unique, I'm sure other folks, like, also lead the way I do. Um, I'm very I'm very unfiltered, when I lead and with my team, and that's one thing I have that is we're all very different. I have a way of leading that is not very traditional. Um, I also like to cut a lot of the red tape, and I also like to be very authentic with my teams, because I just there's no time for all the circling around certain things. So when people join my team or want to be part of my team, we are one, first of all equal. So there's no such thing as because you're a senior and you're just a junior, or you're right out of college, that you don't have the same space to voice your thoughts. All thoughts are welcome, right? Now, some can be not as great as the others, and that's okay. And let's laugh over those. Let's put them on the side and see if we can do something with that. Like have creating that safe space is really crucial. And I would also say that I'm very much of we'll hear everybody's opinion, we'll take everybody's consideration, but ultimately at the end of the day, we need to move fast. We are doing things a bit differently. And what I do ask from my team and I ask also from myself is adaptability and fluidity. So the first thing I did when I came to Known, I inherited a very traditional structure of a team. And the first thing I did is I broke all those walls. To me, is if you're a presentation designer, you can also do layout, you can also do digital, you can also do social. And if you don't know how to do that, that's okay. We're going to all learn together. And so I'm very much in that, line way that if you want something more linear and traditional, I might not be your right lead. But if you want to evolve faster in some way and you want to be more adaptable, come here because this is how we do things now. And it's not for everyone, and that's okay. And ultimately, at the end, we want to work efficiently. We want to create impact faster, but we also want to do it in a way that's more innovative. I don't see why one would not be interested in that.
Yeah, and it provides like a flexibility and a level of excitement and buy-in instead of like stay in your lane, which feels really different. I think we've all been in stay in your lane creative situations, and they're not very fulfilling.
They're not, and the other thing too, I've realized that when I came in, and I know it's very disruptive, I was like, "We are removing these silos," and if you really wanna, let's say, do digital work, you can still do digital work, but you've got now an opening.
Yeah, to try other things and expand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with how collaborative you all work between all the different facets, strategy, the data science, and design, is there any particular piece of work that you've done lately that you can talk about that really excited you, that was really highly collaborative?
Oof, there's so many. I'm gonna try to see, like, which I mean, there's so many. I would say, like, Chef's Table, for instance.
Yeah, that was really cool work, by the way.
Yeah. Chef's Table was one that was very exciting, it was very fast.
Yeah, really fast. How long did you have? It was really short.
I would say we turned around a visual identity system in a month. Um, we also got really lucky on this one, meaning there are times where, you do the dance with clients where there's gotta hit that soft spot, and then you can really fine in and finalize work. And I tend to always install like tissue sessions. Before even going to a round one, what we'll usually do with strategists, they'll do all their work, we'll take all that work, and then I love creating a tissue session with clients where we want to show them what we're creating from a huge range. And we do want to create tension in those meetings too, right? We want to get them a bit uncomfortable as well.
Is that why you call it a tissue session?
Yeah, like we want to give them like the expected work, but then we want to give them like these sometimes even myself would think like maybe this is pushing too much, but we got to create that tension, to really hit that spot. And I would say like I remember when we did a tissue session, we presented like 4 or 5, ranges of ideas of how we could bring things to life, and it was very informative because this client came back with some thoughts, and then those thoughts kind of changed some of the strategy work and then changed our approach, which was perfect, what we wanted. And then we went into round 1. And in round 1, we presented, I would say, like 3 really great concepts. All of us felt like, "Oof, these feel right." Like sometimes you just know, like, oh, these feel right. I hope they see that. And we came in and we left with them picking the one. And it was such a great feeling because all of us felt this is right, and that happened because of that synergy of back and forth with the teams and collaborating and being involved in the we're always working together till the end because things can change, and so that collaboration, like I just said, is not a handoff. It's a we're in it till the very end together, and we will go back and forth till this finalizes.
I think one of the things that process and also your all's culture for the feeling I've gotten from it from getting to talk to like two of you in leadership now is there's a ton of really authentic listening going on to each other and to the client. Not a whole lot of like ego. Here's my big idea. Like, and I think that's, even that process of getting in early and really getting reaction and listening to responses before you get to round one. I think that's fast. That's brilliant, and the work you all came out with for that is beautiful work.
Yeah, and I would say, like the reality is, when you're a creative, or I can only speak to I don't want to speak to other departments, but as a creative, we are passionate individuals, right? It's like chefs, right? We're passionate, we get excited, we get angry, we get sad, we go through all the emotions, and that is also okay. And that's the other thing I was going to share is that if you allow that space where one can really feel all the feelings, right? And take a minute to like process them and then create work that you feel proud of. But then you also know you're not going to take things personally, right? You are also catering for someone, and that someone might have a different palette of taste, right? That's okay. You're not creating this for yourself. You're going to put the best work out there based on the finding and the insights, but then also being able to mentor a team to understand that when you present it, you ultimately need to remember you are also, doing this for someone, and whatever comes your way in terms of feedback, you'll take it, and as long as it makes sense, you'll apply it and you'll deliver that.
It's so important, and I think it's like really like building hospitality into the creative experience
Exactly.
because even though you're adding a lot of your thoughts and sweat and tears and all that, it's about truly caring about the client and who you're serving and trying to get them to a better place, but it has to be a place they want to go.
Exactly. And what you said about hospitality is exactly it too. There's different design shops or creative shops. At Known, we are building with intent, and we really always try to like bring forward work that also has an impact. But ultimately there's going to be some asks that are going to be pretty straightforward and linear. And it is this dance of, being able to be diplomatic, being able to be respectful of everybody's point of view, and thinking of it as a hospitality kind of industry. So mentoring the younger generation to understand that, and to understand that when you're in a meeting and if something doesn't make sense, you can converse and have dialogues. It's how you say things that is really crucial. You can still get your point across. You don't have to change, and you should always be authentic. But it's how you receive information, how you digest it, and how you respond to it that is really crucial. And so it's again communication.
Yeah, I love that because I've always, our agency, we are in our 30th year. And honestly, like what we say behind the scenes is we're a hospitality company that happens to do creative for people. We're here to take care of them and help them reach their goals. And I think that really matters, that attitude, because it's very easy for great creatives to become very like, their pride starts to get in their way or their ideas, even if they're great, get in the way of truly seeing what the other person is needing or wanting. So I really compliment you guys on that because I think that's an independent agency thing, and I think it's just a cool thing. So design obviously right now is going through a lot of change with AI and all the things going on and Dolly and Midjourney and all this stuff. What's your perspective on all the change we're going through, or at least the design part of things are going through right now?
Regarding AI, I know, you have a lot of people that often get concerned or they're fearful of like, how is this going to replace what I do? And I understand, I can see where they're coming from, but the truth is, creative, like, first of all, creativity isn't just about aesthetics, right? And I'm not saying that AI is purely aesthetic because I'm talking now again design and creative and the creative space. But AI is really a tool that we just now get to use, right? Ultimately, it's a tool. You still need to be conducting the thought process, the challenges that you get. And yes, there's all these amazing AI tools where you could feed them, let's say, data and strategy and have them come up with a concept. Surely, but still, it's not the human side of it is really crucial to have. Now, what I love with AI, and we are using AI tremendously, is it really now amplifies like the process. Because what happens is that it will never replace, creativity. It amplifies it ultimately. And the way I see it is like AI is a collaborator. It's another collaborator. It's a helping tool that helps us iterate much faster. And what I love as well with AI now is that there's a lot of the type of how I would say this. It's like as a designer, we would spend hours removing backgrounds. We would be I would remember back in the day when we worked on the McDonald account, we would have to create like 100 assets a day based on one image, sizing it to different sizes. We're talking work that doesn't require a lot of brain cells, let's be very honest. And when you're doing it constantly, you're quite frankly burning brain cells.
Yeah, it's tiring and it's time consuming.
Yeah, now some of us love it. I tend to sometimes like doing some work where I don't have to think because it gives me a minute to take a break, but it is not a good use of someone's time and talent. And so with AI, how we see it is like we get to work, yes, one faster, but we get to really ideate in a way that's different because now when we have ideas, we get to like test them, quickly see how that works using, Midjourney or Runway or all the Photoshop generated fills that we have. We get to create change quickly and test concepts quicker. And once we have those narrowed down, we get to now do the work and really hone in and like really do that craftsmanship and thinking and storytelling. So we get to iterate faster, we get to visualize idea much, more instantly versus back in the day, do you remember mood boards would take like a weekend or a week to just come up with 3, 4 mood boards and now you can do them like in a few seconds.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that human ability to improv, to, riff off of something speeds up where when something takes a weekend or a week to see the concept, a lot of time the creatives you'll lose something in the time. The emotion starts to fade or the inspiration starts to fade. And I feel like the speed of being able to see ideas and experiment with them just makes connection. Because the first thing you think and see isn't usually what you end up with. So it's like a journey of ideas and it just speeds up the journey.
Yeah, and it's just exact to your point. It's just it speeds up. It allows us to, really work much faster. It helps us focus on what we should be focusing on, which is the big idea. And ultimately, for a business, yes, it enhances efficiency and it's cost effective.
Yeah, it really is. And there isn't a whole ton of like just wasted time on tasks that are by rote and just eat up hours, which I love. So every designer, I just love to ask creative people that I get to talk to. And this is a blast talking to you, by the way. Every designer has kind of a fingerprint. I've always thought, like a little bit of a aesthetic or something that shows up in their work, almost a thread. Do you think you have anything like that, where if you look at your work, there's some sort of like fingerprint in there that's very you?
It's a hard one because you try not to put your identity on work, or I try not to, right?
Of course, right?
So definitely, in my art, yes, I think it's clear. One can potentially like, identify what art I've created because I'm very into textures and layers. Whereas in design, I'm more about less is more. And how can you distill it to a point where there's just a few elements and that's it? So I would say, if anything, it's more of that tonality in the work. But then if you've seen some of my work, there's a lot of playfulness with the Kroger and McDonald work and even the Nike work. I would say maybe energy There's a lot of energy in my work.
Yeah, it's almost like a playful simplicity, and that might be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, I love how you said you're always trying to remove and simplify and, get down to just the simplest thing without losing the energy of it. Very difficult to do. But yeah, if I was looking through your work and I was trying to figure out like how does this all relate? Because I'm kind of a nerd.
Yeah. You all are.
Yeah. And I was kind of seeing like, it's playful, but it's also not overwrought. It's not overcomplicated. So I think that lets you communicate more clearly.
Yes, and it's also I try to really stay away from noise. Noise overwhelms me, because we live surrounded of noise at all times. So, I try to also in the work, it's work should not be noisy. It needs to be minimal to the point, but clever as well, and have that little, like, playfulness or, like, touch. Um, and so I think, like, yeah, that I would say would make sense because it's also how I live my life where I live in a very noisy city, but then yet I'll go and disappear on a retreat or climb a mountain so I'm far away from everything.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to encourage everyone that tunes into this episode to, go to the landing page and click on Aya's work and take a look because I just love your work. I'm a fan. So for young designers, people that are, getting into the industry during a time of such change, do you have any advice?
My advice would be, first of all, don't limit yourself to a linear pathway. I think that that is changing tremendously. Same with education, learnings that you think you might need in order to be able to enter a type of workspace. I think now it's more about self expression, authenticity, having a point of view. I would say, like, and I'm not speaking on how I would hire, I'm speaking on you need to differentiate yourself from everybody else is crucial because there's a pool of of a ton of us in there, and being able to have your unique voice is really important. And I would say, like, creating your sense of flair. What is your sense of flair? What is your point of view? And then making sure that you've got the ability to pivot and, like, be nimble and versatile and fluid. I would say that would be my advice, and I know these are very abstract ways of thinking, but also staying in the abstract and not being so square is crucial today, especially.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. I think that, uh, not being a one trick pony and learning one thing and always being curious, it's the way it is now. And, if you're someone who loves to learn and loves to expand your skills and loves to be open to new things, you'll do really well in this industry.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say as well, and I used to do this, and now I'm really trying to stay on track, is it's okay to change your mind. I think that a lot of us are trying to be so careful of, like, what point of view we'll have, and then you realize that you've got more learnings to do and you're discovering more information, and then maybe in a week you've changed your point of view. That's okay. And I think that's the biggest advice I will give anyone, especially also in a career field, is you could be doing something and you might just change your mind and realize that this is no longer what suits me and it's okay for me to pivot.
Yeah. I mean, I think not evolving is a much, much bigger risk. So let me ask you a few questions. I always have a series of questions that they aren't really related to known or being a designer, but I know you traveled and you also like climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which is insane, by the way, and you have to tell me about that. But how has fear impacted you? Is there a line between fear and adventure for you? Because you go out and do some pretty wacky stuff like climbing mountains.
I know. So it's such okay, so fear and adventure. I love the combination of both in one sentence because in a way I feel they don't fit, but I see why they fit. So I will say this. I this is a lot of work I'm still doing on myself of really trying to shed away fear because fear, as we all know it, is holding us back with anything we want to pursue in life. Personal life, professional life, physical, challenges. Fear just is the blockage that we create to ourselves, which is crazy, right? Yes, we also live in a world where people instill, like, fear in the news and all that, surely, but ultimately, we create the biggest fears in our life and our blockages. So I'm still doing that work where I'm constantly trying to be aware of that and trying to shed and shed and shed all the fear left And I don't know if I'll ever achieve it, but that's my goal, is to constantly shed it. And that's ultimately what I want to do. Now, these adventure trips that I do, I guess, is the exercise to help me push that fear out of my life. But I will say, I think you're referring to like Kilimanjaro or climbing Machu Picchu or going to a 10-day silent retreat or doing a marathon and never running before. I would say I am a bit of a, I wouldn't say breaking rules, but I do tend to have an inner child in me who's like, I understand you need to train for something, but let me prove you wrong. And I will learn my lesson through it. And that's what I've done was a marathon. I signed up for a marathon thinking, I don't think I need to change my lifestyle. I think I can do it. Kilimanjaro was, I was going through a little bit of a hard time. A lot of things were changing in the world. I was getting a bit too overwhelmed. Living also in a big city was a lot of noise. And I felt I need to shed all that stress. Let's go climb a mountain. I'm a bit of an extreme, yes, but the extremes allows me to have these aha moments and have a lot of the moments where I realize that everything is possible if you just put your head to it. And I need to do these extremes to understand that. So I would say, yes, be always careful when you undertake any challenges. Kilimanjaro is an easy, no, I won't say easy. Kilimanjaro is a climb that a lot of people could do, done with the right, guides. It is a difficult climb, definitely the last leg. A lot of thinking will happen during that 7 hours in the cold.
A lot about like why did I do this again?
Why did I do this again? But then it will also force you to think about things you don't wanna think about, and that is where the magic happens.
Yeah, I think that line, fear holding you back and then just leaping into adventure like that is, I mean, obviously very defining for you and a journey, but also I think it's really admirable and a great quality, whether you do it with a mountain or you do it by getting yourself to go out and do something you wouldn't usually do or go to a place you didn't usually go. There's a phrase that I love that fear is a liar, because it does trying to keep us down. Unless a tiger is chasing us, it's probably you're probably just doing it to yourself. So I think that's a great perspective.
And it's also, like I always say, like, I was born with a point of view, but I've never had the years to express it because of language. And so to me, it's like the more I do, the more I get to have a point of view. So if I do a marathon, I get to talk more about the whole running experience. I can't do that if I have never tried it. So it's also that sense of like wanting to always be curious and able to be part of conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to, keep yourself fresh and keep your perspective on the world as an interested perspective and not just, witnessing things. It's really cool. So what would you call this chapter of your life right now? You've just became partner. What is this chapter for you?
I would say it's it's tricky. It's tricky because, like I said, I change my mind all the time. What I'll tell you today will change tomorrow. But if anything, I would say I'm in a I would say transformational phase in my life, also because I'm hitting 40 very soon. And with all the work I do in terms of the volunteer work and wanting to amplify that type of work more now, and having had the years of experience of traditional advertising, moving to known, trying different ways of creating impact, I'm in a phase in my life today where I'm trying to really merge the creative work, the artistic work that I do, the volunteer work into that one. And I think you saw it on my website, the 3 triangles to create that one. So I would say transformational only because I am coming to a place of creating that one power. It sounds a bit cliche, but of like really amplifying the work, amplifying the impact. And I'm in the phase of solidifying that mark.
I think that's a great phase to be in your life. I mean, you're trying to pull it all together, and you've got a lot of disparate, very cool things to pull together. So that's fascinating. So two last questions. Um, what's something you've changed your mind about?
I've changed my mind about so many things, like I said, all the time. I've but I would say I've changed my mind about this most silliest thing. I've changed my mind about my passion now for avocado. Hated it for a while. Now I can't stop eating it. I've changed my mind about People not so much because usually people I always give benefit of the doubt, so I wouldn't say like revelations, but I've changed my mind on AI. At first I wasn't too keen, quite frankly. I thought it was a too premature tool that we were not familiar enough with to start really leveraging. And now I feel it's the contrary. It's us kind of taking ownership of those tools and controlling those tools versus them controlling us.
That's great. I love that. I love that we went from avocados to AI. And then, very last question, I'll let you go. What advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time right now?
Oof, I would have the amount of fear I was holding on to. Yeah, I think that the as soon as I mentioned, I've been, like, shedding away the fear that is just, like, installed in us at a young age. I wish I would have shedded that maybe away sooner. I think more of the volunteer work I'm doing, more of the impact work that I do in my personal life would have been much more developed if I didn't have that fear, but at the same time, I do think the fear was very informative of where I am today. So it's very hard when people ask that question because I do feel that we're meant to go through the experiences handed to us in order to become the person we are today.
Yeah. So a lot of the struggles we have build the character that we have now.
Exactly.
I think that's extraordinary advice for everyone, just to try to shed the fear as soon as possible. And I think your sense of adventure and your passion for what you do so clearly comes through. So this has been a blast talking to you today. And yeah, I really wish you all the luck, like on your next adventure. Where are you going next again?
Zambia in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, good luck on that.
Thank
I
you.
hope it's a blast. I hope you get a very enriching experience, and I'll certainly be watching all the work that you all are doing at Known. I'm a Known fan, so it's been just great talking to you today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
Want to hear more inspiring stories? Subscribe on your preferred podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what we're doing, please rate, review, and share. It's the best way to support us. Thank you for listening to Brand Story.